Welcome to another episode of GenPool Spotlight, your pioneer pass to what is going on inside the world of EOSI blockchain and technology. I'm pretty excited for this one because I think this has been a long time coming. It probably should have been forever, but somehow it wasn't. When EOS blockchain technology was developed, I think the idea was to have multiple blockchains that all kind of interacted with one another. And somehow over time, different blockchains diverged and started doing different things, which was in a way great. But now, as luck would have it, things are starting to come back together. And we've got basically part of the team here that works for Zaisan, and you guys are kind of responsible for the EOS core plus blue paper, which basically talks about how all chains can kind of coordinate and work together, and basically the future of EOSIO. So I'm really happy to have you guys here. Maybe you guys can just give yourselves a quick introduction. There's the three of you on screen and one person off, just so that people know who you are and why you're here. Maybe Sheriff, you can go first.
Yeah, happy to go first. Sharif from EOS Dublin. EOS Dublin is a founding partner of Zaisan, who were, as I say, awarded this piece of work from the Network Foundation, EOS Network Foundation, to deliver Core Plus. So that's me.
Maybe Adam.
Yeah, hey guys, happy to be here. I'm Adam. I'm also from EOS Dublin, one of the founding members of Zaisan, formerly Europe Chain. So some of the community may still know us as Europe Chain. Yeah, happy to be involved in this project.
And maybe Daniel, you can go.
Yeah, hello everyone. I'm Daniel Livan. I'm the COO for Zaisan. Joined this marvelous group just under a year ago, but was involved deeply with this project, and happy to be here and talk about it.
And last, Dan.
Hi guys, I'm the CC32D9. I work under this pseudonym since EOS launched, and I work as a CTO for EOS Amsterdam, and I'm part of the Zaisan group, and I helped writing the blue paper, the technical part of it.
Yeah, so I actually first met Stan, I don't know, maybe a year and a bit ago, and he came on for one of our very first Tech Talk on a Tuesday episodes over on another channel, which was really fun. So if you don't know who Stan is, he's been in the space for a long time and been writing code and doing some pretty amazing things. So, EOS Core, what is EOS Core, and why is this blue paper important?
So I guess, yeah, I can kick it off. So look, we were approached a couple of months ago. There was obviously the series of working groups being formed, and one of them was, at the time, it was being referred to as Docu Plus or Documentation Plus. But very quickly, as we started to do some analysis, we saw it was more than just documentation. So it was rebranded to Core Plus. I guess you could kind of describe Core Plus as it's a series of recommendations to basically, should we say, restore EOS, EOSIO, but maybe more than even restore, to kind of recommendations how we can bring it back to where it should be and even beyond. So it was a project, definitely a collaborative effort. We brought together teams that we've worked with for a number of years, teams that we knew had been involved in the EOSIO space, both from a technical implementation level and also from basically evangelizing and talking to people about the stack. So I think it was important that this isn't just a Zaisan project. This was a community effort for people that we've worked with for a long time.
Indeed. In essence, what we did there, just to complement what Adam said, is we brought together a large group of people that were involved in there. So among others, of course, our own team. So you could count there, of course, EOS Dublin, EOS Amsterdam, Cryptolions, and EOS Barcelona. But together with those, we added also people from EOS Costa Rica, from CITIC and Eurocat in Spain. EOS Bulgaria was involved, Rewired One was involved, and those are just a few of the names of experts that contributed to this document. And we tried to wrap into this document much more than just technical views on what EOS should be done, but should have and should present, but also let's say legal aspects and commercial aspects, and really how you could bring generally blockchain, but specifically EOS, into real day-to-day life. So
I mean, I sat down and got through it in about 5 or 10 minutes on my way to work. I mean, it was pretty simple, pretty basic. It wasn't, man. Like, it's like I'm still not through it all. It was a really extensive document. So yeah, like there was a lot of different aspects that were covered in it. We were kind of joking in the back rooms of GenerEOS, like, yeah, this is some nice weekend reading. But you guys have like really thoroughly like put a lot of work into this, and I think it's really important for people to understand that.
Apart from our teams, we are also interviewed lots of people, the experts and newbies as well, because I think that's one of the most valuable inputs is what a newcomer sees and what they needs are, and what they struggle with. So we interviewed a few developers who just started developing. They actually developed mostly on Wax and Telos, but I mean it's the same ecosystem, and they meet the same struggles. So yeah, plus experts like Todd Fleming, who is the core developer of EOSIO. He worked at Block One since the beginning of EOS.
Yeah, so I'm just kind of like pulling this up. So actually, it's the Medium article, and if you go over to the Medium article, then it gives you, I think, 4 or 5 different languages that you can download the paper in. And then you can have a look at it. So we'll just go through like maybe the table of contents here. So you guys, if you're not familiar with it, I'll drop the links in the stream below, but I'll drop it in later. But if you're not familiar with it, you can see just exactly how extensive it really is, right? So I mean, there's an evaluation of the current EOS ecosystem. Followed by evolution of systems, and like Jesus, like this is a freaking university course, seriously. Like it's really well done, right? And so like, what are the most like I don't even want to ask this question because it's a really kind of silly way to phrase this, but I just want to know from each of your perspectives. What are the most groundbreaking parts? Like, obviously it's all in there because it's all important, but what are the most groundbreaking parts that have never really been addressed before by any members of the EOSI community within this? What are you thinking is the most, I don't want to say useful. Yeah, but
quite all of these subjects were touched a little bit by someone during the last 4 years. But there was no, let's say, focused effort on bringing this and finishing up. So there's a documentation that this team still exists at Block One, or Bullish now, which is maintaining the documentation for developers. They did quite a decent job, but still there are lots of gaps in that documentation. For the rest of items that we have, yeah, everyone has worked a little bit on everything, but there's no focused effort on bringing a finished product, with some end-to-end product, which would be EOSIO software suite or EOS as a public blockchain. We don't have a finished product yet.
So, trying to be nice, but it would have been really nice if some other company who was in charge of EOSIO would have released something like this a couple years ago. Just saying.
Well, of course, but I think that if you are looking at this document, it's important to note that document was, at least the way we see it, there are 3 basically phases to promote the system. So if you go through the document, you could see that we phased it as launchpad, lift off, and propel. Taking this let's say analogy to a space, and the idea was to create a basic program, that's the launchpad, of course, to create a good basis for EOS to, let's say, be competitive with the rest of the market, up to date, and from there catch the right direction in order to then lift off. And lift off would then include more elements to actually promote it to bring it to the forefront, and eventually take Propel. That's a very extensive program, and I think that Adam maybe could elaborate more about each of them. In which we already add in Propel, we already add really like massive support. It's data protection, it's legal support, and so forth. So really taking it in 3 levels, from creating a very good foundation, and from there developing on and bring it to, well, let's say, be the best.
Yeah, I think we thought it was important, rather than just giving a whole extensive list of all of the things that we think need to be done. We thought it was better to group them into these 3 categories. And I think, as Daniel said, they are different, but what we wanted to do was, I suppose, make the case that there's not one thing that's more important than another, right? It really does depend on who's building. Stan could build something, he could really want one thing, and then somebody else could build something, they might want something else. What's important for us is to, what we kind of called it, it's like the EOS Cockpit, right? It's to be able to configure what are the modules that you would need, what are the tools that you would need at your disposal to be able to launch this thing and take it as far as it can go. That's really where we wanted to kind of start this. And then what we hope is that each one of these phases, Launchpad, Liftoff, Propel, it will start to get populated by even more things. Maybe there's some things we haven't identified here that other people would say, actually, no, where you say, let's say the addition of some business frameworks, that should go even further. So we want people to, I suppose, give us more feedback, give us more suggestions, because that will add to the basically budget recommendations line items that we've got.
So, and I guess in a way, this probably is going to kind of, in a lot of ways, maybe tie into, I kind of forget what they're called now, but since the ENF has kind of, taken this under their wing, they've kind of been doing these EOSIO, group meetings with all of the chains recently, I think. And so I guess like a good place for people to, talk about things that are happening here would be over there, and to kind of tie in, it kind of would work off as a branching off point. Is that like maybe a correct assumption there as well?
Yeah, I believe that working group is called EOSIO Plus. I think they meet every week or every couple of weeks. And absolutely, look, I think the idea of creating these working groups, just it sparks some activity, it creates some momentum, and it's something that we have been lacking as a community for quite a while. We can sit down and talk about the reasons why, but I don't know if that's important. I think it's now more pressing to say, how do we go forward? How do we actually start to get some of this stuff built? That's what I'm concerned about.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up, right? Like, because we've been saying this for a while, like, ideas are great, but implementation is tough. And like, what we're doing over with our project as well is like, we're really focused on, building a model for change. And I think a lot of the developers in EOS or EOSIO in general are that same way, right? The community might have had like, negative points here and there, but for the most part, the real developers who are in EOSIO, like Stan, for example, it's just heads down building and trying to build a model that like can be incorporated by the blockchain world, but also like the outside world, which is interesting. And one of the things that, Block One did that I always thought was one of the good things that they did, right, was they were always trying to bring users that were beyond blockchain into the fray, right? So I'm assuming this document covers that as well. There are there's information for already established developers in the ecosystem, but there's also information in how to incorporate your business project into that as well. I'm assuming both of those are.
They're in there. It's kind of one of the things that jumped out when we started to do the analysis and started to kind of ask questions around the community, right? So Block One did have a lot of initiatives, whether hackathons or grant programs or their own training suite of courses. The training suite of courses had tens of thousands of people start those courses, but that didn't result in new people joining the community, or new investors or new developers or new projects. Likewise with the grants program, there was no way for Block One to really drive those new people or new initiatives into the community, because Block One were never really engaged with the community. They didn't really have their hands in there. They weren't active. They tried a few things, unsuccessfully, to put it mildly. But that was always what was missing. The top of the funnel was there, but there was nothing to continue that all the way down to projects that can be incubated, that can start, that can attract investment, and that can grow. So a lot of that framework is kind of laid out here within Core Plus as to when you're starting these things, you can't just start them. There needs to be a follow through and an end for them.
Yeah, and one of the things I like about what you guys kind of talk about in this liftoff section as well is Eve has been doing this kind of rant thing recently, and one of the ones that he did, I think last week, was like exchanges and vilification of exchanges, vilifying exchanges. And I thought that was really good, because like I have this issue because I live in Asia, in East Asia, and a lot of ways that like people look at the world over here are completely different from the ways that they look at it in Europe or even in America. Like even Europe and America, for example, look at it in different ways. So when it comes to like these overreaching protocols where everyone should think the same way, it becomes kind of difficult, right? Like what we might describe as unfair gameplay in the West, like that's just normal business practice, right, in the East. And so what I like about this is you've kind of incorporated, right, like some use cases that blockchain might actually be used for in China or in the Netherlands or in America are completely different, right? And that's like just the way that society is oriented and the technology is incorporated, right? Like, I mean, even in China, we still live in a cash-based society. I mean, people are using their phones. There was never that debit card kind of society that there was in America. So if you're trying to move from like, a non-blockchain centric universe into a blockchain centric universe, not all countries in the world are going to move in the same direction at the same time. So I really like how you've kind of incorporated that into this as well, right?
Well, in essence, it's very much aligned with the way of thinking of Zaisan, because one of the things we had, and actually, well, we were called until very recently Europe Chain, and now Europe Chain became actually a product in our portfolio together with another chain that we are producing for India, because we think that indeed various cultures, various environments need various products, various blockchains in this respect when we are talking. So Europe needs its own blockchain with its own set of rules, for example, respecting the GDPR, the privacy regulation in Europe. And same would go, of course, for the Indian market. And I know this concept was copied with the LAC chain, so the Latin American chain, that is working there also, again, on the same protocols. And indeed, those needs are there. So regional chains are part of our belief. And I think that this comes, of course, into into this document as well.
Yeah, so for those of you that don't know what Europe Chain was, I guess Europe Chain was the kind of blockchain that was set to be compliant across all of the UN, right? And there were some problems, with EOS and the way that it was structured and the way that the block producers were organized and other things, because as we know, the regulation of people's individual rights in Europe is probably more strict than anywhere else on the planet, really. So
yeah, I mean, Europe is kind of a leader globally in terms of human rights and privacy, and GDPR was one of these breakthrough regulations that is now starting to be copied in other periods of the world, other places in the world. So the idea for Europe Chain was, we need to have data centers in Europe that are running these nodes. The validators or the block producers on that need to be compliant. They need to be known entities, and they need to be able to interface with real businesses that's deploying on it. And we have some projects that are running. The chain is still running, but they're kind of R&D projects for government type agencies. So Eurocat, for instance, think tank out of Spain, delivering client projects and putting it on Europe Chain. It's an easier kind of sandbox environment for them to do that than trying to deploy on mainnet, which may have perceived issues or geographical concentrations, etc., etc. So that was the opportunity we saw with Europe Chain. And as Daniel said, we see an opportunity to do the same in India and other jurisdictions. And the idea eventually is, all of these networks will loop back and attach back to an EOS mainnet to, maybe be the bridge for liquidity, maybe be the on and off ramp into the fiat ecosystems, etc. Those bits are still to be worked out with IBC and how do you actually architect all of this stuff. But EOS and EOSIO have lots of really good things going for it. It just needs to be starting to put it together and getting the teams working together to deliver it now is the next phase.
And so, yeah, I like how you guys also have the one pager at the top, but also you've got the JIT page with all of the I guess the documentation for what's happening. Now, I have a question. So when you guys update this, is this going to be a document that's going to be current, like that's going to be updated in real time, or is this going to be the base document where it will be built upon with a part 2 or a part 3? I'm just kind of curious about that. Like, if I want to know what's happened in the next 2 or 3 months, do I come back here, or will there be updates like in a footer section or something like that?
The way go ahead, Stan. You go ahead.
I think it's not defined yet, but yes, there is already feedback. Just on the first day after publishing, we have feedback, and people are adding some new wishes for further development or asking questions. We didn't decide yet how. I mean, it needs to be some kind of a living document. We didn't decide yet of what form it should be, what kind of format, because this publication is done with all publishing and design and formatting. It's quite difficult to add anything, and it doesn't make sense to maybe update this kind of paper publication, but making some electronic copy, which is just text, and then following up. We didn't yet have time to actually to look at this as a.
Yeah, I mean, Stan's right. I mean, as far as we're aware, the next phase isn't decided, but the way it's been organized to this point is there's different pillars. So there's also a wallet plus working group, which will produce a similar paper, maybe not quite as long. We'll wait and see. There's an audit plus, there's an EOSIO plus, there's a
API plus.
There's an API plus. What has to happen next is all of that work needs to come into a roadmap, and resources need to be allocated to it, and teams need to be assigned to it with deliverables, with accountability, etc. So those phases that we've kind of outlined, we kind of see them as something that could stretch across all of those groups. We've got that launchpad phase, or we were calling it stabilize. How do we get everything current? How do we get people talking the same language and delivering to get us to a baseline that we're able to do the next phase from? And then within each of those functions, work packages need to be agreed. As I say, teams need to be assigned and give responsibility for that. And doing that in a decentralized community and ecosystem, it's not easy, right? It's a challenge for the ENF to be able to organize that. Hopefully we've kind of outlined some ways that we think it could be done, and then we'll see what happens next. But make no mistake, there's a lot of work to be done.
Well, there really is, and I think the way in which we wanted to present the research, we didn't want to throw any of the information away, but we also didn't want. I mean, Jimmy, you're looking at this version of the document. I believe there was a version at one point that was like 200 pages. There was even more. So. What we did was we basically split it into 3, right? So you've got the one pager. So if people are just sitting on the bus or sitting in the bar, they want to say, what is Core Plus? They can read that one pager. If they want to dive a little bit deeper, they can have a look at the actual Core Plus blue paper itself, which might take you that couple of hours. And then if you really want to dive deep, we have the Git book set up. And while it hasn't been decided, my vision on it is that Git book can be a living document. That can be a piece of work which the community can contribute to. They can say, guys, I suggest an addition of this feature or this or whatever, and that should go into the Git book. And eventually then they can start to become things that are being worked on in GitHub, and the developers can start to work in ways that they're comfortable with. And that's kind of the way I see it, is that it goes from this research piece into something which can actually start to be implemented. So you'll see here we've got the Corpus paper in the various languages. If you scroll down, Jimmy, you'll see that there's all various types of work done on different Ethereum development frameworks. We did a lot of work on basically benchmarking EOSIO with other blockchains. So there's a whole, if you click that blockchain comparison there, there's a whole piece of work done on basically the other popular networks and what's happened there. We didn't want to put all of this into the blue paper because we would have overwhelmed people with way too much. So that's why we decided to just break it down. But I see this Corpus wiki as something that can continue to be expanded upon. But if people want to take a deeper dive into this, they should look through the Git books and please leave us feedback, suggestions, whatever.
Yeah, so I guess for the people who just want the quick overview, go over here to the one-pager document, and you can and then if you want the kind of broader scope picture that's been scaled down to manageable terms, then go over to the blue paper. And if you want something that's actually moving forward in real time, then you're going to want to check out that Git book.
The Git book, exactly. Yeah, and actually,
I clicked on the document, but it didn't. Oops, sorry. I guess I clicked on.
Even if you go just to the document, click that one pager. See where it says the one pager.
Oh, I see. I clicked on the wrong one earlier. Sorry. There we go.
Well, that's just taking it to here. If you'll allow me to share, Jimmy, I'll show you the one page.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe your link is wrong in the
thing. The link could be wrong. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Sure. I can share. If you share the screen, we can throw that up, or you can drop it in the chat, and I can open it from there too.
So, can you guys see my screen?
Nope. There we go. Now you're up. Oh, okay. That one. All right. Sorry.
Yes. So basically, as we said, we wanted to just condense it into a one pager. What does Corpus actually cover? What are the various different phases? So as we said, Launchpad, Liftoff, Propel, and Launchpad, we can describe that just as filling the major gaps that exist, right? That the Corpus team, Zaisan, and our contributors, we've identified these gaps. We think they need to be filled. We think that should be done before we start talking about anything, this kind of fancy schmancy stuff in these later phases. Let's make sure that this shit actually works. After that, we have to do a comprehensive review and update of all of the documentation. And that's not just, I suppose, as Stan said earlier on, it's not just making sure the information is there, but it's making sure that it's there and presented in a way that can be consumed by the right type of audience, right? An executive is going to read something completely different than a DevOps, okay? But they both still need to have that content there. I think it's important to kind of think of it in that sense. But then once everything is done on the Launchpad side, we think we now need to look at enhancing the onboarding. So like Sharif talked about, how if you have this great documentation, that's one thing, but who's reading it and what are they doing with that? Can we onboard new partnerships? Can we create new working groups in universities and government organizations? These are kind of the areas we want to hit in Liftoff. And then when it comes to Propel, that's when we're actually talking about how can we improve the speed, the scale of EOS? How can we actually have a network which can support applications with millions of users? And I think the key here, which was touched on already, is having EOSIO there in these major business centers around the world. So in Europe, in the Americas, in Asia, having boots on the ground there, actually telling the story. And I think one of the things we've learned for the past kind of 3 years or more talking to businesses is there's still way too many who just don't know about EOSIO. And once they start to scratch the surface, once they actually start to build stuff, they're really impressed. So this needs to kind of continue. And in our words, this needs to propel and become as big as it can be.
I think that there's only one thing that I can add to what Adam just said. In essence, if you dig deeper into the documentation, budgets, and so forth, you would see that each one of those phases is assembled of smaller programs or smaller works that were envisioned. And therefore, if the community would decide, for example, to adopt Launchpad in its entirety, but still take parts of Liftoff and Propel, so those are modular, you could actually create that. So program could be created in such a way that, okay, the ground is set, and then, yeah, some elements of Liftoff are in, some elements of Propel, and yeah, of course, it does make sense eventually, but it is modular.
And in a way, I think this is good because I remember like back in the early days of EOS, you had all of these teams, and some of them are still around, some of them aren't, but they were building really interesting things. But they were kind of like building their own projects, focused on their own things, like developing their own things the way that they wanted. But then different teams were developing things different ways, right? There was a little bit of interaction in the early days with Buscore and whatnot, but like for the most part, people were sticking to their own chains and their own projects. And what I like about this is it actually breaks down a framework for people from chains all across all of the EOSIO chains to come together and actually work on something that's definable that will apply to many different projects, right? It breaks it down into different categorizations as opposed to this is our team, this is what we're going to build, this is what we need to do, to, oh, here are the pieces of the machine that you can plug into what you're building. And if you're interested in developing those for yourself, then why don't you come together with people who are interested in developing them for other chains and for other people, and we can all work together and we can amplify, how that goes out into the ecosystem and basically create this like exponential effect that will, propel all of us forward together, into the world and as a blockchain as a whole. So I think it's really well thought out, like plan to kind of put these almost working groups together in place, right? And I just, like hats off because you guys have done a lot of work, and it's some of it's even over my head, but like it's just I'm just hats off because like you guys deserve to pat yourselves on the back and have everyone else do it. Like I know we're in early phases, but just the amount that of thought that it seems that you guys have put into how this would work, right down to like, okay, here's the launch pad, and if it doesn't work out that well, there's still like portions and modules that you can pick from here and there, and it doesn't have to be like A to B to C to D. It's like all of these different things, and whatever works, and whatever needs to be rehashed is rehashed. Totally no pun intended, but I kind of like it. But yeah, it's just really, really good. So if you guys are out there in the comments and you have any questions, please feel free to type them out for these guys. But yeah, like I'm pretty stoked to be in this new kind of new age of EOS, as you say. There was a lot of potential in the hopes and dreams of people, 2-3 years ago. And that's kind of started to rejuvenate itself. And it's exciting to see all of these people coming together from all of these chains working together as well, as opposed to just branching off and doing their own things. So.
Yeah, excellent. Really appreciate it. Like it was a lot of work, but we have to thank all of the contributors and collaboration partners that we had as well. And I think, look, EOS and EOSIO still has a whole bunch of potential, right? We had like what, a 3-year head start on a lot of other networks, and even still it's competing or outperforming with some of these so-called new killers. So while I'm not a maximalist of any point, like I love all different types of networks, I still think EOS and EOSIO can have a competitive advantage if we get our shit together and start building cool stuff. Like that's what needs to happen.
Well, I think it always had that potential. I just think like a lot of the community got like disheartened, and like the people who were here were like Stan or Sharif, who like you guys as well, who are still like building, right? Like there's so many good projects out there that just heads down building, and this is kind of our time to shine, right? Like this is where we can go out there and we can showcase these things to the world, right? It's like, put your bank book away, get out your ATM, card, because the future is here. And that's like, in our version of it, it's EOSIO, right? And of course, there's going to have to be ways for us to bridge to other blockchains, right? That's going to be a necessity. We're not going to take over the world. Like there's not going to be one blockchain that's going to rule them all, right? But it would actually be nice to see, protocols like Ethereum seeing the value in EOSIO for DeFi or for gaming, because these things are definitely.
But if you just have a look at what's happening in the Ethereum space, all of this layer 2 and EVMs, etc. that Telos has come out with, the fastest EVM, or so they're claiming. It's not a one size fits all, and there's community users over here that obviously anybody building on EOS needs to be able to attract. Adam said at the start of the show, not many people know about EOS, and I kind of see that as an opportunity, right? So regardless of the baggage that we've had, or the fighting, or the issues, or whatever, nobody really knows about it, right?
No.
Outside of our own little bubble. So if we can get our acting gear and just point the ship in the right direction and start working and start delivering, people are open to new suggestions. People are open to new tech. People are open to trying new things and new opportunities, experiences. We just have to be welcoming to them, and we haven't been welcoming for so long, right? It's been anybody that comes in, they kind of go, "What the fuck's going on?" They're talking about this and that, whatever. It's right. It's hard enough to build your first 100 fans, never mind your first 1,000. So, yeah, back to the drawing board, I think is a good way to put it. It's an opportunity. We're Block 1 moving away. Let's see what we can do ourselves.
And I think that the one thing that must be said, of course, about EOS, well, it works, and it works great, because if you check out Wax, it is such a busy network. It works amazing. So, it's not a POC or something. This thing works. It works real life. So it's time to indeed bring the mainnet there. Show what it can do.
Well, and if you plug it into a mainstream application and people start using it without even knowing that they're on blockchain, that's where the value comes, right? And I think we have more potential to do that in this space than a lot of other blockchains, and do it well. I mean, if your blockchain goes down for 3 or 4 days and it's plugged into a whole network of shopkeepers, that's not good. I have never seen EOS blockchain go down for 3 or 4 days, unlike some other blockchains. Not throwing shade, just saying, right? Like we need to bring this to the world, and I think we have a lot of potential to do that. And to Sherry's point, it's interesting to me to note like where the transition is, because I don't think there's going to be this gradual, like, okay, 1%, 2%, 3% of the world, 4%, 5%, 6% of the world is adopting blockchain. I think we're going to go like 1, 2, 3 to like 75% now uses blockchain. There's going to be that, aha moment where like something gets plugged in that's massive culture. And I'm actually expecting EOSIO to be a big part of that, whether people realize that or not. It just wouldn't make sense to me if it wasn't. Right, because like you said, there's so much attractability across some of these chains that have showcased themselves, like Wax, for example, with the NFTs and the gaming and the transaction volume that's happening. That like, yeah, it's just going to be really interesting to see how this all plays out. But I think what's happening now in this day and age with EOSIO, with the ENF, with Pomelo grants, with this blue paper, with this coordination that you guys are like pulling together, it's really exciting. For my last question, actually, to you guys, and of course, if you need to say something after that, that's cool too. But so I guess the best place for people to get active in helping with this would be probably over on the GitHub side of things. So if they go over there, contacting you, reading up on it, is there a better way for them to become involved in these groups? Like, what's the best way for people to get involved and do their part?
Yeah, so there's a Discord channel set up specifically for the working groups. So there's an EOSIO Plus, Audit Plus, Wallet Plus, whatever. All of the various groups have a channel. I would advise, please take a read through the blue paper, leave some feedback. As we said, like, we want to add more. So whether it's on Launchpad, Liftoff, Propel, it doesn't matter. It's if you think something is missing or something should be added there. As we said earlier, if you're building something and your life is made more difficult because you don't have something, make a suggestion, because that's really what we need here. We need to pull together. There's a lot of smart people working on this. So if we get all of their basically wish lists, we should be able to build something really cool.
And especially quick wins, right? There's lots of things out there that are just frustrating. A pet peeve of mine is how long it is to try and get a name auction one. I've got projects that want to get a name, and I'm kind of going, okay, I'm not sure when I can get this. If I put somebody out, somebody might outbid me for no reason than, just spitefulness. So these things could be very easily fixed, and makes it more pro business, more pro growth, more pro user. So a list of quick wins. If I was designing this, I'd be like, what's the 5 things we can do this quarter, and just get them done. And I know there's a lot of work going on in Mandel and trying to fork away from block one repos, etc. So there's a lot happening, but somebody should be just specifically looking at user pain points and what can we do quickly.
And on Discord, we have already quite a lot of feedback in our chat. We have this core plus chat on Discord at ENF. We are getting really good feedback already. Just recently, one of the developers of this Korean DID solution based on EOSIO, they published quite a lot of source code on GitHub, and I still need to go through that. There's also feedback from Block One engineers as well. Block One developers are supporting these community initiatives. They're not just blocked out completely. There's official Block One, which is the management of the company, and there are people who are working now for Bullish, and they keep being involved. So it's really amazing community that we are having and enjoying, and we hope that we develop this community further on.
Sorry, yeah, and Kivnik, yeah, we talked about this earlier in the episode. So yeah, it is kind of a combined merger of all of the roadmap for all of EOSIO. And it, I guess, is a living, documentation that will be ongoing. There's tons of work to do. I don't know if you guys have any, dates or yearly evaluations, but I'll ask just in case you do. Probably not, is my guess, but yeah.
Well, the way we've tried to structure it, and if you take a look at the blue paper and then also the budget estimates that we've put together, it's what we've tried to do is break them into individual line items. Remember, it's important to note, we're not saying that Zaisan or just our company will do all of this or should do all of this. We're looking for teams to basically say, oh yeah, I could do that, or we could do that. But I think it's important for us not to say, look, the start date is this and we will be finished at this date, because things are going to keep coming in, or people will say, hey, let's fix this. I think it's important to start. It's important, as Sharif said, to identify what are the quick wins, what are the things we absolutely need to work on, and then let's put a budget and a team on those. And then we take each one of the items on the list as its own thing. And hopefully we can get teams from all over the world funded and get them all working on the same direction. That would be great.
And likewise, I saw the comment kind of coming up on the screen about if some of this stuff is too technical. It's our job as a community to kind of tie all of this work and effort into something that is more community digestible, so that they can understand it, right? So that they can take part in it and they can participate in it. And sometimes a lot of the Pomelo grants and this and the other, they can be very tech focused if somebody wants to build something, but there's also lots of people who just want to get involved, who want to look and feel something, they want to work with teams, they want to test out applications, understand what's going on. So I think we need to do a better job of that. And in fairness to Eve with his slash rants, I think that's a great starting point, right? He's a good communicator, the short, the digestible, this is what it is that we're doing. Because this is a people business, right? It's not just tech.
Also, Randall is doing a pretty good job at facing the people, right? So to answer their questions and direct them, and now it's mostly support, basically, right? Where do I store my key and how do I use my wallet? But their team is also involved in the community, and in the end, they can also help the community unite and bring the information to them. So that aspect, we didn't discuss that in detail yet, but what they're doing is basically community building from their side of things, right? So people ask questions, people need the entity to answer them, but it is a very important also aspect of building a community.
And well, upwards and onwards, I guess, because that's what we're here for. I think most of us are here to see this, not just on this screen or in this blockchain, but in this space. the majority of people who are here trying to develop, trying to build. It's not easy. You know, we take a beating sometimes, you know, both in the space and, you know, what we have to give up in our real lives as well. But like, if we all kind of come together and work together, you know, there's no point in everyone, you know, building their own sidewalk to the train station when we can all just kind of chip in and do it, all for one and one for all. So thank you so much, all of you, for, you know, dropping in here on this GenPool Spotlight to give us kind of the overview of the, you know, Core Plus and the blue paper. I learned some things. I didn't realize that there were different, you know, factors to this, like the Wallets Plus and the other things that you guys had mentioned. So I'm gonna have to dive into that. That's actually one of the most exciting things that I've kind of found out today personally, because I see that there's, you know, a lot more that isn't even involved in this per se. So that's pretty cool. And just, oh yeah, all of you out there, just, you know, get in touch with these guys, and you know, let them know what you guys think of their proposal. Let them know what you think of, you know, what they put down on the paper, and help them out in the best way, so that we can all kind of, you know, push this out there to the rest of the world and showcase what amazing things are being done here in the EOSIO space.
Great. Thanks, Jimmy, for putting it on.
And yeah, thank you guys, and we'll see you guys again. Well, probably on the next Pamela pitch deck. Sorry, same channel, wrong show. Probably on the next GenPool Spotlight, whenever that happens to be. Thank you all, and have a wonderful night until that time again.